We actually have a trainer in the water with a whale that they're not supposed to be in the water with. He grabbed her ponytail and pulled her into the tank to her death. Brancheu struggled to free her ponytail with both hands. From the moment she set eyes on Shamu at SeaWorld, 10-year-old Dawn Brancheu decided she wanted to work at SeaWorld. 3 decades later, she was being dragged mercilessly by Tilikum the orca into his tank. What triggered the ruthless attack on Dawn still puzzles the experts. But for Brancheu, it was an agonizing way to go as the 22-foot killer whale treated her like a piece of meat. He thrashed her against the side of the tank relentlessly, breaking her bones and mutilating her until he felt her body go limp in his mouth. Even then, he wouldn't allow others near her. Dawn was Tilikum's 3rd victim. This was never what she bargained for. The tragic true story of Dawn Brancheu, the SeaWorld trainer whose death changed everything. Dawn Brancheu was a celebrity, the star trainer of SeaWorld. Dawn Brancheu was one of the most popular and loved trainers at SeaWorld in Orlando. She was their poster child and always a star attraction at every show. Beside the marine animals, Dawn raked in millions for SeaWorld, and her performances with orcas were the main attraction. Her Shamu show with Tilikum especially became world famous. Tilikum was used to Dawn and even shared a good rapport with her. The giant killer whale had been a performer at SeaWorld for 18 years, 2 years longer than when Dawn worked there. They were partners and the oldest workers there too. Yet strings in their partnership ended in one of the worst tragedies that shocked the country. Dawn was born and raised in Cedar Lake, Indiana. When she was 10, her family took her on vacation to Orlando. Seeing the performance of Shamu at SeaWorld mesmerized Dawn. It changed her life forever. The majestic beauty of the orcas created an obsession for her and animals. She just had to work with them. In one interview, Dawn was quoted as saying, "I remember walking down the aisle at Shamu Stadium and telling my mom, 'This is what I want to do.' It was her dream to do it," said Marion Lovard, Brancheu's mother. She loved her job. Soon after graduating from the University of South Carolina in psychology and animal behavior, Dawn began volunteering in animal shelters. She loved animals and kept 2 Labradors, stray ducks, chickens, rabbits, and birds at home. Dawn's love for animals finally landed her a job working with dolphins at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey. In 1994, Dawn finally found her dream job at SeaWorld in Orlando. Dawn's role in SeaWorld grew into an important one. To manage the intense rigors of working with killer orcas, Dawn ensured she was physically fit and active. She ran marathons, participated in cycling races, and even pumped iron **** Tilikum. The rebel orca ***. Dawn became a leader, taking charge of the famous Shamu shows at SeaWorld. Dawn breathed new life into the Shamu show and became featured on billboards across Orlando. Ever since the first original Shamu debuted at SeaWorld, orcas always took its place, becoming heirs to the most popular brand in animal entertainment. When Dawn joined SeaWorld, Tilikum was already a newcomer brought to SeaWorld Orlando in 1992. The 22-foot monster killer whale was always a rebel. Right from his capture off the coast of Iceland in 1983 to his transfer to SeaWorld in 1992, he was never truly broken. Tilikum lived at Sealand for 8 years. He was so notoriously disobedient that he would even get picked on by other whales for not behaving. When one orca displayed disobedience, the entire pod at a marine park would go without food. The other orcas recognized how Tilikum was often the cause of their ill treatment, and they often thrashed him. On more than one occasion, Tilikum was found badly injured by other orcas. Adding to his problems were the little tanks meant for orcas. This was a creature taken from his environment, used to living in the vast expanse of an ocean, now made to exist in the solitary confines of a tin can. Tilikum was like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. And tragically, it was in the presence of Dawn Brancheu that he did. At SeaWorld, Tilikum's life was no different. Pacific Northwest whales, who regarded him as an outsider, battered and bruised him. Dawn meets Tilikum ***. When Tilikum and Dawn met, the human and beast instantly developed a rapport. It was evident that Dawn was Tilikum's favorite human, and they developed a close bond, with senior trainer John Hargrove. He remarked that he had a great relationship with her, and she had a great relationship with him. I do believe that he loved her, and I know that she loved him. On the sad day of February 24, 2010, Tilikum and Dawn were performing their famous Dine with Shaemoon show at SeaWorld. Beside an audience on the surface, hundreds were below witnessing the show through see-through glass in an open-air dining area. Everything was going as rehearsed. Dawn and Tilikum had done the show several times. It was all part of the job. Once they finished, Dawn laid on her stomach on the edge of the tank and began a nose-to-nose routine with Tilikum. Her long ponytail floated in the water and struck Tilikum's nose. No one is sure if this triggered his rage, but at that moment, Tilikum dragged Dawn into the water. Tilikum had killed before. Tilikum was no stranger to killing. He had already killed 2 trainers in the past. In 1991, he killed a young, inexperienced trainer, Kelty Byrne. In 1999, he killed 27-year-old trainer Daniel Dukes, who was so severely mutilated that there was not a single part of his body without injury. Even his genitals were bitten off. To get into the water with Tilikum and bond with him was extremely courageous of Dawn. But she eventually paid the price. The horror that unfolded at SeaWorld wasn't just caught on camera. Below the surface, hundreds of terrified tourists witnessed a horror movie come to life. People being served their cuisine felt too sick to touch their food as they saw Tilikum begin battering Dawn. The 5-foot, 4-ton whale dragged her deeper and began drowning her. Witnesses said he would not allow her to rise to the surface. Each time she broke free and tried swimming up for air, he dragged her back down. The brutal battering of Dawn Brancheu continued. Tilikum began violently shaking Dawn's body. At times, he grabbed and shook her by the arm. Sometimes he shook her by the leg. One witness described how he even thrashed and shook her around by the head. As Dawn tried escaping, he battered her with his snout. At one point, just when Dawn thought she had a chance and scrambled with all her strength towards the surface, Tilikum swam straight into her like a battering ram, hitting her squarely in the chest. Even as Dawn went limp from the impact, Tilikum went around the pool and returned, swimming at full speed toward her with his mouth open. It was as if the whale was battering a victim, his prey. People were witnessing the live mutilation of Dawn as Tilikum snapped off her arm and began chewing on it. This was even scarier than any scene from Jaws*, because this was being played out in real life. It was not colored water but real blood, Dawn's blood, that oozed into the mouth of Tilikum as he ate her arm. As if that wasn't enough, the whale chewed at her head and tore her scalp right off. People began screaming, and yet no one could do anything. The crew watched as the merciless battering broke Dawn's jaw, and one ear was seen dangling from her face. Her knees were broken. She could no longer move as her arms were fractured as well. Tilikum was a monster going crazy. There were other smaller whales in the pool, but none participated in the bloody massacre. Meanwhile, the staff quickly swung into action, segregating the other whales into a neighboring pool and attempting to save Dawn. Dawn was already dead. It was impossible to survive the battering she was receiving from Tilikum. Even as her body remained limp and lifeless, the whale was not done thrashing her around. Later, the coroner found that even Dawn's spinal cord had snapped and was severed in the attack. The entire staff at SeaWorld began slapping the water in hopes of intimidating Tilikum, who continued to thrash Dawn in his jaws. Paramedic Thomas Taubin rushed to the scene, but it was pointless. After 30 minutes, Tilikum was isolated in a special medical pool with a hydraulic base. Only then did trainers dive into the water to retrieve Dawn's body. One of the trainers found she had no scalp and dove back into the water to retrieve her defiant remains lying at the bottom of the pool. As Dawn was being removed from the water, Tilikum looked agitated and tried getting back at her. It seemed the beast just wanted to rip her to shreds. Dawn was placed next to another pool, covered in a black sheet. Witnesses reported seeing Tilikum repeatedly approaching the surface, trying to lift himself above the pool wall. What happened to Tilikum? What went wrong? Experts still can't pinpoint what happened to Tilikum and what triggered such rage in the orca. Some feel he had mistaken Dawn's ponytail for a toy, but was that really the case? The incident involving Dawn prompted a documentary called *Blackfish, Death at SeaWorld*, where marine scientists attempted to analyze and explain the event. They felt that Tilikum was angered by not being rewarded after the show. The most logical and likely explanation was that Tilikum had snapped after 26 years of living in captivity, suffering beatings, and being traumatized by the confines of his captive environment. Do you agree that marine animals as large as Tilikum should never live in captivity and be trained for human entertainment? Was Don Brancheu's merciless killing a disaster waiting to happen? We may never know. But remember, Don was the third victim of Tilikum. Check out the next video on screen to see some of the others.